Okay, thank you. So, guys, today we are going to start building our first Mule application. So we'll get hands-on, and you will understand lots of the concepts and terminologies that we were talking about in the previous classes. But before we go to the building an application, let's first talk about an enterprise service bus. So you might have read Mule ASB, or you might have heard people talking about Mule ASB, calling Mule an ASB or an enterprise service bus. So why is it called an enterprise service bus, and what is an enterprise service bus? What is it used for, and so on? Let's see in this slide. So enterprise service bus is a middleware, and last time we talked, MuleSoft is a middleware or an integration tool. So Mule is one such software. So Mule is an ASB. So you may hear people talking about Mule ASB for that reason, and it is used for application to application communication. The difference between an ASB and point-to-point integration is if you have lots of applications, and if you try to connect them end to end by writing code, the point-to-point connection becomes very uneconomical, costly, time-consuming, and it is also hard to manage, hard to monitor, and troubleshoot, and also applying security also becomes difficult. So when we say enterprise service bus, you hear the bus here. You can think of just transporting or moving data from one system to another system. That is why it is called enterprise service bus. So it moves the data, it transports the data from one system to another system. So in this plot, in this figure, I am showing point-to-point integration. We want to compare the advantages of an enterprise service bus versus point-to-point integration. So here I am showing point-to-point integration of different applications. So if you see application 4, for example, in the bottom, to integrate it with the different applications, you have to write explicit code, which will be very unwieldy, long code. And if something changes, if application 4, if there is something wrong with application 4, then everything will fail. So you have to go modify everything. Whereas with a service bus, so there is this service bus, which is a middleware, an integration layer, and the different applications, they communicate with the service bus. So let me move this here. They communicate with the service bus. You say there are different applications in the bottom, for example. If application 4 fails, we don't need to do anything with the other applications that are getting with application 4. We just, once we fix application 4, then the other applications will be able to get the data from the service bus. So that is why it is called enterprise service bus. When you read about enterprise service bus, think of a middle layer where the different applications are decoupled. Like application 1 to get data from application 4 in the enterprise service bus architecture, it doesn't need to know the structure of application 4, what application 4 is, how it handles the data, and so on. It doesn't need to know that. It just can get the data from the enterprise service bus. Whereas in the left, if you are to integrate point-to-point integration to integrate application 1 and application 4, you really have to know the data structure and everything of application 4 to integrate it with application 1. So this is why MuleSoft is called Mule ASB. It is a middleware, it is an integration software. Okay, so when we develop applications, to call them or to send requests to them, we use a URL. And before building our applications, it is important to understand the structure of a URL. We use the URL every day when we interact with the internet, when we browse different websites. So let's understand the structure of a URL. So it starts with HTTP protocol. followed by a host, then port number, then we have base paths followed by subpaths. So what in this case, let's see what are each one of them, which ones are optional, and what do they look like, how do we specify them, and so on. So HTTP protocol is either HTTP or HTTPS. If you go to any website, usually you see HTTPS if it is encrypted, that is secure. If it is not encrypted, we see HTTP. So these are, it is, when we say HTTP protocol, it is either of these two. And in our application, when we build an application, to call that application, we will start with HTTP protocol. The other important one is host. So host means, host is the machine where your application resides. So if it is in your laptop, then your laptop is your host. If it is somewhere in the cloud, you have to have an identifier of that machine, that computer in the cloud, but that is the host. And if it is your computer, we call it localhost. So localhost corresponds to your machine. Like if our HTTP protocol is HTTP, then :/, the host, we put localhost followed by the port and so on. For a remote host, we use the IP address usually. So IP address is a unique identifier of a device on the internet. So if there is a device on the internet, like for when we use computers, for example, from Amazon, from Google, or from Microsoft, then our computers have IP addresses. So we can log into that computer using that IP address. So that helps us to identify our host. The local host, when we develop applications in our machine, we can put localhost, or we can put also the IP for a localhost, which is 0.0.0.0. So 4 zeros basically. And port identifies the specific application in the host. So in my laptop, for example, in this laptop, I can have, at the same time, I can have MuleSoft, Python, R, the things that I usually run, MySQL, and so on running. So each one of them, they are in the same host, but what identifies one from the other is a port number. So each one of them will have unique port number. Two systems, two of them cannot have the same port at the same time. Like for example, by default, if 888 is the port number for Python, but if I use that for MuleSoft, then when I try to launch Python, it is going to tell me your port number has been taken. So do you want me to try another port number? Something like that. So it helps to identify each application in the same host. We can have multiple applications in the same host with different port numbers. Example, MuleSoft, usually these are the defaults, but we can change them. So you see there are port numbers here I'm showing as examples for MuleSoft. For Python, the Python and MySQL, don't worry about that for now. I'm just bringing it here so that you have perspective about it. By default for MuleSoft, the port number is 8081, and for MySQL it is 3036. But these port numbers, we can also modify them. For MuleSoft, for example, the 8081, if it has been already used by another application in your system, then you can use 8082 or another set of numbers. So that is port. So far we have talked about the HTTP protocol, what host is, and what port is. Next, we are going to talk about base path and subpaths, and we will see examples, and then we will get started with developing our application. So, like for example, I just wanted to show you an example. This is a Python code that is running in my computer. As you can see, the HTTP protocol is HTTP, and the host is localhost, which means my computer. The port number is you see for 8 is, and the base path is notebooks, and the subpath is that Seaborn thing. Another one, this is in the cloud from AWS. The IP address is not is not correct IP address. I have just modified the numbers. So otherwise it is not recommended to show IP address to public. So as you can see, there is the IP address followed by a port number, which is 3838. Then I have the subpath budget forecasting. This is some application that I built. So the subpath is mandatory, but the base path is optional. So in the second example, for example, I don't have a base path. I just have subpaths. IP address and port number are usually replaced by domain name for security reasons. So rather than putting the IP address and port number, which could be hacked by hackers, we use domain name. So this is, for example, my blog. You see the HTTPS. It is to show it is encrypted, it is secure. Than HTTP, it has an S in it. So HTTPS. The mulesofenthusiast.com represents the IP, the host, and also the port, the host and the port. Rather than putting the IP, we are putting a domain here, and then after that we have the subpath. So as I say, the base path is optional. Let's see an example in MuleSoft. This one we are going to build today. So we will not put subpaths, but if we have a couple of applications that are that should be under one project, we can give them the same base path, and each one of them under that base path will have different subpaths. But like for this one, we'll just put the subpath as airports, and as you can see, this is an example. I can invoke it, I can call it from my computer. I can request this application, and it can give me a response. And if I push this to the cloud, if it is accessible from the internet, also others can also request it, can send the request to it and get response. So this is what the structure of a URL looks like in a nutshell. For this is I think enough for our Mule application process to understand how we send our requests and how we develop it. And the other thing is we can have different Mule applications in the same host, but the base paths and the subpaths will differentiate them. So if we have, it is like a hierarchy under the same base paths, you can have a couple of subpaths, and in the same host also you can have different base paths. Okay, perfect. So I have a couple of questions here. Let's go to Kahoot before we move forward to make sure they are following. It is mainly about the URL structure. Go to home, I guess. I have week 2 quiz 1. Start. Okay, let me see. 60 seconds, 30, 30, 60. I guess all of them I can make them. Oh, I'm showing the answers. Okay, I'm starting. I think the time is not, for some of them the time is somewhat long, but that's okay for now. So this is a game pin. Put your game pin and let's get started. We'll get started after half of the participants join. Like we have around 90 people, so let's wait until we see close to 50 people on Kahoot. Okay, perfect. So yep, let's get started. Oh, did I open I'm sorry, I opened the wrong code.
This is from yesterday.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So let me exit this, skip. Okay, go back. Yeah, it should be class 2, week 2, class 2, quiz 1. Yeah. Go to home. We have week 2, class 2, quiz 1 is this one. So you can start over, guys. Okay.
Are you gonna provide us another pin?
Yes, I'm generating another pin shown on the screen. The questions are short, so each one of them have only 20 seconds, so you have to be very fast. Okay. 55 people. Okay, starting. Which can be a port number for email application. Read it carefully. Perfect. AD81. Yes, that is the default value, but still if the others are not taken by other applications, the others can also be a port number for Mule. So basically, when you create, we will see when you create the application, you specify the port number, and if it has already been taken, then it fails. It tells you it has been already taken, and then you have to put another number. But it is not hard and fast. Like MuleSoft is not necessarily 8081, or MySQL is not necessarily 3036, and so on. So the answer for this one is all of them can be port numbers. You will see if you face some errors, if you have built a Mule application already and they are trying another one, it may say your port number has been taken and it could fail. Then one of the debugging techniques is changing the port number and checking if it works. Okay. Fish. We can have different Mule applications in the same host. True, false. In the same host. Consider my laptop or your laptop. Can you have different applications in that same machine, in the same computer? Yes, we can have different applications. It could be different MuleSoft applications, or in my laptop, as I said, I can run at the same time. Like right now, for example, I have MySQL, Python, MuleSoft, R, and so on that are running. But each one of them, they have their unique port numbers, but the host is the same, just my laptop. Okay. Binyam. I guess this one is the last one. In creating URL of an application, This paths, take it as subpaths. It is as called paths in MuleSoft, but I mean subpaths. Subpaths is optional. Is the subpaths optional? So we have base paths followed by subpaths. Now it is saying in creating URL of an application, paths is optional. True or false? Okay, perfect. Yeah, many of you know that. So the subpaths, the base paths is optional, whereas the subpaths, which is paths in this case, is mandatory. Like it is an identifier of the specific application that you built. But an application could be in a specific project, in a specific folder, or it could be standalone by itself, and you may not care to give it a base path. Okay, perfect. So this is Fana and the fish gets the highest score. Thank you very much, guys, for participating. Now we'll continue to the next section. I guess I'm done. Oh, there is another question. The IP address for a local host. The IP address for a local host is 0.0.0. Disregard the last period. The IP address for a local host 0.0.0. 3 zeros. Is it 3 zeros or 4 zeros? Yes, it is 0.0.0.0. It is 4 zero, right? It is tricky. I mean, I was trying to be tricky, otherwise it should not be included here, I think. It is 4 zeros. Okay. Our final podium, wow, squad is at number 3. TTV number 2, followed by gold winner, Mokshe. Okay, perfect. Let's continue to the next section. Thank you very much, guys. So the question is, as I said, I included them so that it helps you to understand what we discussed, and also kind of it gives you a hint what the certification questions, interviews, and so on will look like. Okay, so now we are going to build our first Mule application, and on the way also we are going to discuss what we are doing in each step, and we are going to discuss what that can translate into in real world application. So the first thing, can you, all of you, those of you who have installed Anypoint Studio, can you open Anypoint Studio by just double clicking the application shown here? Probably now I can unmute you so that people can ask. Allow participants to unmute themselves. Okay. Okay. Where is my screen?
Hello, Fish.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you. So, can I ask a question?
Sure.
With the point that you just discussed. So, I was wondering, you have said that the local host IP address is 0.0.0000.
4 zeros.
I also know that local IP address is 127.0.0.0. So, I was wondering what the difference between the two.
I think it's every local, every IP address is different. Not all of them the same.
Yeah, this one is a local host for MuleSoft. I have seen, like in R, for example, for there is an application called Shiny, and they use 127.0.0.0. For MuleSoft, it is the local host is 4 zeros. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Another question?
Can I ask Dr. Fish?
Sure.
Yeah, I have been create account as you recommend us before, but what the problem is, after I put my name and I enter all the necessary requirements, but it asks me manage your verification methods. What can I do then?
Manage your verification. Did you log into your Gmail, to your email that you provided to check if they sent you a link and to verify it?
I just click connected. Then it displays like one-time password generator add, built-in authenticator add, then security key, Salesforce authenticator. It asks me like that.
Okay, turn back, bro. Turn back and don't agree with the verification code, okay?
Okay.
Back and don't agree.
Okay, thank you. I will do it again.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
for
much.
the help.
Okay, my question is, Dr. Sorry,
Sure.
I have a question. I have already downloaded the Anypoint software on the zipped file, but I can't extract the file all.
Oh, did you rename it before you extract it? If you rename it before you extract it, or if you put it, if the path is very long, like for example, if you, let me open my file browser, and
Yeah,
if
I didn't rename it. That's as it is. I'm not renaming it, that one. Sorry.
like the path, is it very long? Where did you put it in your C if you are using Windows? And if the
I'm
path is
using
very long,
Windows.
also it may not work.
Oh, does I have to put on the same path?
It should be short. They say put it on C, for example, and try.
Yeah, okay, on C.
Like this one, let me show you. If I go somewhere here, you see the path is very long. If I bring it here, it may fail.
So does I have to paste on C and
Yes. Yeah, cut it and paste it on C here. Like mine, for example, it is here.
not expected to be renamed, right?
Rename it only after you extract it. Don't rename it before you extract it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll turn up. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Okay. But how do you see people who have raised their hands?
Not that I can see, but I can go around and see if there's anyone.
Okay. And anyone? I see 6 people who have raised their hands. If you have questions, you can unmute yourselves and ask questions.
Hello, Doctor. So I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I could not clearly hear you. Can you speak up or get closer to your device?
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we need Java in order to run the Mule API. Once we develop the API, we require the Java to run. That means we need. Java is a runtime environment. We use it as a runtime environment for the Mule application.
So did you watch the videos that I sent out on the necessary software to install and the installation steps?
Yes, I already installed it.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah. So yes, so Anypoint Studio is a Java platform. However, it doesn't mean we are going to write Java code. There are many applications that depend on Java. Like in my work, for example, there is a simulation software that I use. It is called AnyLogic. It is very similar to Anypoint Studio. So yeah, they are Java platforms and they use similar to the Java IDE, but we will not write Java code. But installing Java is very important. If you don't have Java in your computer, it will not work.
Okay, so this means the Java virtual machine, there is a JVM that I was studying yesterday. So that is what we are using in order to run the application?
I guess if you go over step by step over the video I shared, if you do that, you should be fine. And if you face any errors, please share in the group so that we can discuss.
Okay, sure. Thank
Perfect. Okay, so
Hi, Dr. Fusa.
sure, go ahead, please.
Did anyone install on Maven on Mac Pro? I'm just trying to install, but I'm unable to.
Okay, I'm not sure. I don't
Yes,
have
I
Mac.
did, for example.
Does anybody of you have Mac?
I do.
Did it work for the installation?
Yes, it does, but it will take a long process down the window. It's a little bit harder.
Oh, I see. Can you please help him?
I tried, but those commands, but it's not working. I couldn't find the bash file, something like that.
I'm sorry. Maybe I would research online or talk to people. Yeah, it has been a couple of years since I last used Mac.
If the bash profile file, file is not available, you need to create it from terminal.
Yeah.
You need to create one, and then you need to declare your path, the Java path and the Maven path inside the file.
If you can you help me? I mean, we can connect
Sure, yeah.
later.
Yeah, sure, I can help you with that.
Yeah, by the way, creating the study groups, that is one of the advantages of the study group, so that you can help each other. So at the end, we will talk about that also.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it.
Sure.
Hello, Dr. Sa.
Go ahead, please.
Sorry. I tried to download it, but it's asking me like the education part. I put the student and it says the industry, and I put it again educational, but it says not requiring. So what should I put? And it's asking the phone number and the
Phone number
place.
you can put. Phone number you can put some just random numbers.
Okay, and I put the place where I live. I put in United States, and it's asking me like which state, and I put in Newark, and it's asking.
Yeah, guys. Okay, let's make this short. If the downloading and setting up the software, since I already created a video and uploaded it, go over that, watch it step by step, and if you face an issue, then share questions, and also you can help on you can ask people in the study groups that we are going to formulate. Otherwise, it will take us so much time if we are to discuss about the installation here.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no problem. Okay. So
can I suggest, sorry.
Sure.
I think it's time for us to create groups, otherwise some people could get frustrated and drop off. So
yeah,
I mean, we can help each other with installing the softwares.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, I have listed it in to do for today to discuss about. So let me first cover the contents that I have, and then we can get back to it and discuss that. So those of you who have not set up your softwares, who faced some issues, just go over the slides, follow along in this presentation, and then once you fix your software issues, then you can do it. Just for today, just watch.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. So let me show you in mine, and I will. So this is my Anypoint Studio. I have different projects here, but don't worry about that. In your case, you may not have any projects. I will close this one and delete it and start over. Talk one by one. Okay. So like what Anwar was showing, on the left, we have Package Explorer. Our projects will be here, and each project, the dependencies, the data, and so on will be there. We will see one by one once we start building. So this is Package Explorer. So just know the terminologies. On the left, we have Package Explorer. Here, this region, gray region now, is the canvas. And here in the console, we will get status about our project, like any errors, any logs, when it is deployed, its status, and so on. We just click the console and we see it here. And on the right, we have Mule palette. That is where we get different kinds of modules. Modules are used for creating our Mule applications. So package Explorer on the left, there is Package Explorer already here on the top left that you see. This is the gray region is canvas. The bottom one here we have console where you see the status, and on the right we have Mule palette. So to create a project, the first time to create a project, what we do is we go to File, then New, then Mule project. I think I have specified it in the slides, so you can follow along from the slides or from here. So I will just move forward. So we give the project name here, and there are different conventions in naming styles. One is using underscore, like in software programming. When we have different keywords, we separate them by underscore, or we can make the first word of the of each word an uppercase, and so on. For MuleSoft, usually for project name, we use what is called kebab case. So let me, kebab case is read dash CSV, for example. I am naming it read CSV. This is my project name. I'm not using underscore. I'm just using dash, that is C. If it is underscore, it is called snake case. You will get used to these terminologies down the line. Don't worry. This is just called kebab case. So we use dash for the project name, and I click finish. Now when I click finish, okay, what am I doing? Why am I, what is the goal of the project here? Why am I calling it read CSV? So what I'm trying to do is we want to build an application, a simple application that reads a CSV, and when we request it, when we call it, it can give us the CSV in JSON format. For example, it could be in our browser or in Postman. So for now, the data is in my computer, but think the data could be somewhere in the cloud, in some computer somewhere also. So it is the same thing. So MuleSoft, it integrates data, devices, and applications. When we say that, data integration is one of them. So if you have data in different locations in the cloud, one could be in Amazon, one could be in Google, one could be in your company's database system, then to integrate it, you have to read it, you have to bring it together. So the data could be in CSV format. So you use read. I am building this application that reads CSV, and when I call it, it displays the data in JSON format in my browser. Okay, so now you see, after we create the project, now the gray region, this one now is white, and on the right you see the project that we created, read-csv. There are different things here. Don't get overwhelmed for now. Just at a high level, this is called configuration file, the read CSV. Here it is called Mule configuration file. And another important one, this one, pom.xml. Later on, when you understand it, you will understand the code. But for now, just remember this contains different dependencies and other information about the Mule project that we are building, including the runtime version, the like Maven version, and other things. So this code, once we get very good at it, we can modify the code. We can write code ourselves. But for now, we are going to work with drag and drop. So here in the canvas, we have message flow, global elements, configuration XML. So we have these three parts. And the message flow is where we drag and drop different operations and connectors from the right. So as you see now, see for example on the right, on the package explorer, see what we have. As I drag and drop different connectors and operators from the right to here, then they will be copied on the package explorer. That means the dependencies will be put here. The POM file will also get modified to include what I did. So the first thing for an application, the first thing I need is I need some kind of, in this case, let's say the first thing I need is a listener. A listener means it listens when a call is made. And that listener, I get it under HTTP. So if I go to the HTTP module, then I can drag and drop listener. There are, so let me first drag and drop it. So drag and drop it, put it here. Now when I drag and drop it, you see here it gets updated, and also the configuration XML, this XML file also gets updated. The computer is getting stuck for some reason. Okay, so it gets, this one also gets updated. But especially in the beginning, we just work with drag and drop. So this listener, before that even, I can show you, let me talk about a flow. What a flow is: when we build applications, we build flows. This one is going to grow into a flow, but I can create an empty flow for us to show you its components. So if I bring this and collapse this one, so this is my a flow generally has 3 parts that you see here. Disregard the upper one. Let me delete it. This one. Sorry. Okay. So when we talk about in MuleSoft, where we talk about flows, and flows are collections of different components, and they have 3 main parts. We have the source, followed by process. You see, source is this one, the first kind of region here. Then there is process. Then there is error handling. So and this flow, what it does is, for example, it could be listening to external calls. Then when the external call is made, there will be different processes here. It could be bringing in data from somewhere, transforming it, aggregating it, and sending it, the final result, to somewhere. So the source is responsible for triggering the Mule flow. The whole flow is triggered by the source. And there are different source triggers. One is listener, because it listens, as the word shows. It listens for external invokes, for external calls. It could another one is scheduler. You can schedule, for example, you can call it get invoke it, start the flow every Monday at 5 a.m. something like that. There is a scheduler. There are some 6, 7, 8 of them. We will see. Actually there are more, but the most common one is, we are going to see about 8 of them. But for this tutorial, we are going to see a listener. So the listener is a source trigger. We bring it to this source. Then the process, in the process region here, we put different data aggregation, filtering, reading, writing, and so on. Okay, so a Mule flow is a collection of these different Mule connectors and processors. And a Mule flow has 3 parts: a source, a processor, and error handler. The source and the error handler are optional, but process is not. There could be flows, we'll see, there could be flows without source and error handling that could be called internally. So that means they will not be listening to the external requests. But having process is a must for a MuleSoft to work. For a MuleSoft, for a Mule flow to be called a flow, it must have a process. So to compile, for a Mule flow to compile, it should have at least 1 process. And we can have multiple processors, as we are going to see. We can have multiple processors, each processor doing specific things. Okay, so now to this source, we go to HTTP and we bring a listener that will listen to our requests. And this listener, when we bring it here, the properties configuration here opens. So there are things that we have to specify here, because as I showed in the URL structure, there is HTTP protocol, then there is host, then there is port, then there is base paths and subpaths. So we specify them here so that we can send our requests using the URL. We have to get the URL of our application, and we give it descriptive names here. If you see, when you see display name here, the display name is for us to just understand what it is doing. When we bring different processors also, you will see this display name. You can give it anything that makes sense to you, which is descriptive, that people, when we read it, when they see it, can understand what it is doing. But path is the subpath, which is the last one in the URL structure. So this path, for example, let's call it read CSV. So I'm calling it read CSV. And if you see also this red X, it means it is required. It will not work if you don't fix this. You see here also it is showing this red exclamation. That means it is showing, it is saying there are things to fix. Okay, so the other thing that it needs is a configuration. Under the configuration, we give the port number and the base path. Base paths, we will leave it for now. So how do you give the configuration? I have to be slow here. How do we give the connector configuration? We have this add here. We just click add. If we have already connector configurations, we are going to see we can have first we can define our configurations and save them and use them in different flows. But now we don't have any configuration application, any connector configuration. So we add it clicking this add. And once you have added one, next time if you want to edit it or view it, you just click this edit, you don't click add again. If you click add again, it is going to create another one, and then it will try to use the same port number and it may fail. So let's click add. So as you can see here, there are lots of things here. Just for now, we are going to accept the defaults. As I said, the host for MuleSoft is the host is localhost, which is 4 zeros that you see here. The port is the default port 8081. We can change it also. We said we will see specifying additional things, but for now we will take just the defaults, and the base path we specify it here. Now, since it is optional, for now we'll leave it. The other thing is, another good practice that helped me when I studied MuleSoft is when you create different flows, when you study and create different projects, since what you worked on, when you come back after some time, you might forget it. It is good to write notes. So in every Mule component, in almost all of them, there is this rectangle where you can put notes. This is for you to put some note what it did or what it is doing. Some key learnings that you learned there that you don't want to forget. So this one I just click OK, or I can test the connection. If I just press test connection, it will say connection successful because it is in my laptop, so it should work fine. Probably my computer is slow, it is not responding fast. That could be why it is taking time. But when we connect to databases, external sources, to the cloud, and so on, in every stage, when after we make the connection, we have to test the connection, and we should get the connection status as test connection successful. Tooling instance is not active. Yeah, I don't know why it is saying that. Okay, let's try it, and it is not responding. Probably that could be the reason. Let me deploy it and see what it will say. But basically it should work because it is in my laptop. Okay, so I press OK here. So now every changes I made, I have to save them. This exclamation thing, it is still showing even if I have put the paths and connector configuration, because I have not saved it yet. If I save it, there is this save all. I would use this one. It saves everything that I did. Or if you want to save only the recent changes you made, also you have save on the middle right also. So just save this. Now this one will go away. Okay, so now we have an HTTP listener. So what is it doing again? What is an HTTP listener? We are going to send a request to this application. We are going to send a request. Think this application is in the cloud. It is accessible from the internet. So it should listen to requests. For example, you are on Facebook, then you click on something, then it shows you details, it shows you the photo, or it shows you the profile of someone. Then that means there is an application that is listening to your requests and processing your requests and showing you the appropriate data. That is basically what we are doing. So once we have the listener, as we said, we can have a couple of multiple processors here. And we said we just want to read CSV data and when we request it, the CSV data, we want it to come in JSON format. Okay, and for that, so as you can see here, you see this add modulus. Today we are going to see add modulus and also search in Exchange. Let's start with add modulus. So by default here, the modulus that you see are just the sockets, HTTP and core, but you can add modulus by clicking here and searching and dragging and dropping them to here. And also the modules that you commonly use, you can put them under favorites. So let's see, there is file module that reads files. There are different modules, lots of modules that you can also bring from Exchange. But when I click here, when I click add modules, I see different modules here. There is database module, email module that automates email sending, responding, and so on. Database to connect to database and get data from there, or insert data, and so on that you see here. But for now, we want file module. So this file module, we drag and drop it here to here. So see, when I drag and drop it to here, the file module dependencies will be added under the package explorer on the right. See my screen. So I will drag and drop it here. As you see right now, there is no file under the package explorer. We see under read CSV, you see there is source, which is src, main Java, and so on and so on. There is sockets and Mule server, which is by default there, and HTTP. Basically, it starts with sockets and HTTP, but now I will drag and drop file here. So now when I drop the file in the file module to the list of modules here, file module gets added here. It is here, as you can see on the right. And also our POM file also gets updated to this code. So if you go to dependencies, you see there is Mule file connector that is being added. So this is a Maven file, and when we do drag and drop, it is generating the code for us. Okay, so now under file module that you can practice by yourselves also. It is good if you have time, if you explore. When we learn something, go extra distance and explore all of the different operations they have. So under file module, we have mainly we'll focus about read, write, and on new or updated file. Okay, this read is just reads, that's clear. Write also, it writes from the in the processor, it writes what is there to somewhere. It could be to disk or to cloud somewhere. Whereas this one, on new or updated file, it is similar to a listener. It is a source. It triggers a flow. What it means is, when there is a new file in some folder, for example, we will see examples actually. So you tell it, you specify your folder, and in this folder, when there is new data, then trigger my flow and do this, or take this action. So like, for example, if there is data that is coming in my company, for example, we have data that comes from Amazon every day in the morning. And when the data comes to our S3 location, we don't want a person to go there and to manually process it and isolate it and do something with some part of it and do the rest with another part. Rather, we create a flow like this, and when there is a new data coming in, then it picks it up, and based on the business logic, the execution happens. So far we have seen two source triggers: a listener that listens to a request or a call, and on new or updated file that checks, continuously checks. You can specify the time. You can tell it, for example, every 5 seconds, check this folder, and if there is new data, take this action. We will see an example, but for now, let's make it simple, and let's drag and drop this read operation. So it is a processor, so we put it here. As you see, the flow now starts to make sense. There is a flow. They are connected. The different Mule components are connected with each other. So it starts from the listener, it gets triggered, then something will flow, something will happen. Okay, again, the display name, we can give it a descriptive name. So let me call it read CSV, because I want to read CSV. Now, since I want to read CSV in my computer, I hope you have downloaded airports.csv. I have downloaded it. If you have not yet, you can go to the slides, and I have specified how you can download it there. So I have this airports.csv. Let me open it and show you. And the other thing is also, by the way, another tip for Windows users, it is good if you download and install Notepad++. It is really nice. It is text editor. As you can see, its name is search online Notepad++ and download it. So the data, as you see, is the data that we saw in our previous class, information about different airports. So now what we are building is a Mule application that reads this data and displays it in the browser or in Postman when we invoke our flow. So I have to tell it where the data is located, basically. So I click here. You see this four dots on the right. It is telling me this red X is telling me the file path is important. Give me, what do you want me to read? Okay, I want you to read airports.csv. The other thing is, as you see, the X went away. The other thing is I have to specify the data type, and the data type is called MIME type. So I specify MIME type here. Specify MIME type, and you go on the right, there is a drop down here. So this is CSV. If it is JSON, change it to JSON. So you can download the JSON data, XML data, and so on, or play with your data also. That it follows the same steps. So you specify application JSON, application CSV in this case, I mean. So this is a CSV, and then the display name is read CSV. I have given it what file to read. So think now it is in my computer, and you may say, you just opened it in Notepad++, or I can open it with Excel. Why all this hassle to read data in computer? But it is the same thing when you have data in different systems in the cloud also. So think this data, just think it resides somewhere in the internet, and you want to grab it, to integrate in your application, to do something with it. So now we have read it, and we can drag and drop, add more processors. So this CSV, I want to, when I request it, I want to get it in JSON format, because most applications expect data either in JSON or XML. And there is, under the core module, there is transform message. So I drag and drop this one also, bring it here, connect it to read here. So the sequence matters. First, a flow gate is triggered by the listener when a request is sent. Then this read, it reads the data. Then this transform, it is going to transform it. Then and so on and so on. So one is feeding to the other. We are going to see in our next class what a Mule event looks like, the data structure as it flows, and its scope and so on. But for now, just remember that the sequence matters. So one is input. The input to one is output from the previous one. So here the transform message, by default, it says, see this %sign DW 2.0, it is called data weave. We are going to spend extensive time studying it. It is coding language for Mule. It is easy. We are going to see it. But just for now, remember these three dashes, you should not mess up with them. So this is, we specify some headers above these three dashes, and we put the rest of our code down here. Anything here, down here, we are telling it use data weave 2.0, and my output by default it says is Java, but I want it to be JSON. And here when it reads data, it creates a payload. We will see what payload is, but payload basically means the main message or the main data, the useful data is what payload is. So I just put here payload. So what am I saying here? Listen, and if there is an invocation or a call, an external call coming in, the flow should be triggered, that flow should read data, my CSV data, the airports.csv, and next, once it reads it, it should transform it to JSON. And we are almost done now. So we have created a simple flow. And another thing is that we can add to here is we can add a couple of different things. But this one, if I just run it and send a request, it is going to give me the data. But let's add a couple of more operations here. So, like for example, another common one that we are going to be commonly using is a logger. A logger just prints logs to the console. That's it, for us to see how it is behaving, how it is working, if it really worked, or if there was an error. Like if in the logger, if I have a logger here, and if I wrote something there, and if my Mule flow failed before it reaches the logger, then the logger will not print what is there in the logger. So now let's give this, for example, invoked, or I have been invoked. For example, so this one, it will just print it in the console. That's it. A logger just prints logs. It doesn't have any other functionality. Or the other thing is also, yeah, okay. Let's stop here for now. So this is our first Mule flow. What is a flow? A flow is a collection of these Mule connectors and processors. And a flow can have three components. We said a source, error handler, and processor. The source is optional. The error handler is also optional, but the processor is not. We can have multiple processors in a flow. In this case, our listener listens to any external calls. So imagine, for example, you want to check your weather in your city. Then you are sending some request to an API. Then that API based on your request, because when I search, I live in Colombia, when I search Colombia, Maryland, then it is going to send my location and other necessary information to the API. Then the API listens the request and it sends the weather data, because they have the weather data that they generated using some forecasting models. But also it just doesn't send the data in what is in the format it is in the data store, but rather in a format that is appropriate for my application. So if my application is needs JSON, for example, but the data is in Amazon in Excel, for example, it has to read it and transform it to JSON and send it to my application. Then it gets rendered in a way that I can read. Then I read my weather for my city, for example. So that is what we have done. So once we build this flow, the next thing that we do is we test it. So to test it, we just right click. To run it, we just right click in the canvas, as you see here. So I click here and run project read CSV. There is also debug project read CSV. You will spend with it quite some time to understand what MuleSoft is doing, because if you just click run project read CSV, if there is some error somewhere, it is not easy to understand what happened where. But with the debug, you can track the flow, how it is flowing from one to the other, and you can understand what happened where. So we will see, we'll spend with this debugger also. But for now, let's run the Mule project. So when I run it, you see in the console, it is printing status that it is preparing it, collecting necessary artifacts, making the server ready, because we have the Mule runtime. And once it is ready, then it is going to say deployed. But if it is if there is an error, then it is going to tell us there was an error. Actually, in my case, there is an error. It is saying maybe the error message is showed was not necessary. Okay, let's see. So it takes some time until it deploys it. I just want to show you the process, what it looks like. And after you click run, if you see it failed, then to get overwhelmed, just read the logs here and understand what happened where. It is from your errors that you learned. So you will face lots of errors. So you see now, status, this is what I see. Status, it says deployed. It means it is ready. So I can invoke it from my computer, but I cannot invoke it. So you cannot invoke this application because it is not in the internet. It is just in my laptop. Had this been pushed to the cloud and made ready, then you can invoke it. Okay, so now we can let's send a request. We can use Postman, and let's see in listener the path, what path we gave it. So we need this one, not the project name, not the read CSV. This read CSV project name is not what we use in the URL. The URL, it uses HTTP status, HTTP protocol, host, followed by port, followed by base path and subpath. Base path is optional, we said. The subpath is this path, so I need this one, read CSV. Okay, now if I come here, our port, we didn't change it, it was 8081. We used the default local host because in my computer I just give the name, the subpath. So now the other things that we will talk about in this class or in next class is there are different verbs that we use in RESTful API. They are called methods, and they tell our URL what to do. Like get, for example, because I want to get the data, I use get for getting the data. If I am to send, then I have post and put, or if I am to delete, I have delete and so on. Mainly the most common ones are get, post, put, patch, and delete. I have included in the slides what each one of them are doing, but now we use get. So we use get and localhost, followed by the port number and followed by the base path. So now when I send a request, this request is going to the listener is going to listen to it and start the flow. And then once the flow starts, the next processors will take place. Then and the next processes are reading the data, transforming it. So at the end, the transformed data will come to us, and the logger is going to just print in the console that it has been invoked. And to see what happens next, by the way, there is this clear console. Which one was it? This one. You can clear it so that you can read new logs. Okay, so now I can click send. Okay, where is it? Okay, yeah, here it is. So there are a couple of things that we have to pay attention to here. So this is the response is in the body. It is called under body that you see here. And our data originally is CSV that you see, comma separated. Each column is separated by commas, and we have rows. And we said in our previous class, each row will be in JSON format, each row will be an object. You see, we have one object here, within curly braces, another object here, another object here, and so on. And the different rows will be in a square bracket. So this, now we have built an application that reads data from somewhere and gives us the data. Like for example, this could be weather data, for example. And rather than from your computer, it reads the data from a remote host. By the way, we use Postman because Postman is more convenient and it has more messages and so on. But there are also other additional other ways of doing that also. You may have heard of curl, or even in the browser, it works with get method. If I just go to the browser and just paste this here, this one, you see there is the HTTP protocol, there is host, there is port, there is my subpath. So I can just press enter here also. So the data should be populate, it should come here in the browser also. So you see the data is here. So it is such kind of data that the applications that we use, they render the data that comes in this format to a format that is more readable for us. It could be a map, it could be a table, it could be some kind of plotters or heat map and so on. So we built our first Mule application. I hope at a high level you understood what we did. But if you have questions, I can take 1-2 questions before we go to the next one. But the main thing is, to iterate the main thing is, I think I have put it in the slides. We can go over the slides. The main thing is you should remember here are, okay, yeah. Oh, by the way, I forgot a couple of other things here. So, okay, we said it returns an array here. The other thing that we need to see here is the status code. The status code, it tells us it is a status. I mean, if it failed, it will tell us, it will print a code, it will show a code for that. If it worked, it will show a code for that. If our request was wrong, if we didn't, if the app doesn't exist, it will tell us another code. If the app exists but there is a problem with the app, also it is going to tell us another status code. So there are lots of status codes, but the most common ones that we have to remember are 200, it means okay, the request worked, so it is returned by these messages. 400, bad request. You may face this one many times. 400 is bad request. This happens usually when there is a syntax error, and 500 is a server error, when there is an error with the server. And they are returned by these different messages. As I said, the messages are the operations that tell the URL, that tell the verbs that tell the URL what to do. And these are the messages we have, the common messages. Get is just for getting data, usually in JSON or XML, but we can specify in CSV also. We can make it CSV and other formats. Post is for creating a new resource. We will see, you will understand what resource is, don't worry for now. For sending data, take it like that for now. Or you can delete also. And there is put to replace a resource completely. So the difference, see the difference between put and patch here. I think get and post are clear. Post is for creating new resources. Delete also is also deleting. But see, notice the difference between put and patch. Patch is to partially update a resource, only the data that you give it. Whereas put is to replace it completely, and if it doesn't exist, it creates it. I have a count question on this one, so. Okay, so yeah, so let me add another thing here. So in here, the CSV, we transformed it to JSON, but we can just get it in CSV format also. Let's see this. So this will be just CSV. That's the only thing we do. There are additional properties we can specify here. For example, you can remove the header and so on and so on. But just if we put CSV also, it should give us the data in CSV format. So this one, I can restart it, and when I send the request, it is going to give the data in CSV format. Okay, so save. And in most cases, when you make some changes and update it, you don't need to restart the application. You don't need to stop it and rerun it because it updates itself. But there are cases where you have to restart it. If you get stuck, if some error is persisting, then just restart it and it may work. Okay, so this one we'll test it later. Okay, let's review what we just saw here. Make this slideshow. What I learned is when you share the slides with others, Slide view struggles. Okay, that's okay. So so a Mule application receives events, like in the example we saw. It receives a call, processes them, and routes them to other endpoints. In our case, our endpoint is just displaying the data back to us to where we made the request from. But it could also be inserting the data to somewhere, sending it to somewhere. So that is a Mule application. And a connected collection of Mule components is called a flow. So the different components, when we connect them in some way that solves some business logic, it is called a flow. And a flow has a source, one or more processors, and an error handler. We'll spend extensive time on the error handler part because it is very important. Source and error handler are optional. However, for a flow to compile to work as a flow, it has to have one or more processors. And we can have multiple processors plugged together in a flow, which makes sense. Like one processor may get data from one database, another processor may read it from your computer, another one may merge them together and aggregate them, another one may filter them, and so on. So we can have multiple processors in a flow. And there are different Mule event source. The Mule event source initiates the flow, as we said. So in our case, we use it a scheduler, a listener that listens our calls, but there is also a scheduler that triggers the flow at some intervals, regular intervals, or based on some cron pattern we are going to see. We also discussed this one on new or updated file. You can try this out. Actually, we'll also see it in our next class. When there is a new file in a given folder, it could be moving it to somewhere, renaming it, processing it, and inserting it to database and so on. So these are source. They initiate the flow, so they are source. Whereas event processors, they are a lot. They focus mainly on filtering, aggregating, transforming, joining, and so on. And in today's class, we saw the transform message to transform the data from JSON to CSV. And another thing that I want to show you here is, so in here, maybe let me stop this because we may not have enough time. So in here, for the file module, initially it was not showing there. We clicked add module. And when we click add module, we see it here, and we drag and drop it here. When we drag and drop it to here, then the file dependencies for that module, they got added here on under.
What is inside the smoothie? Why are you asking that? Why?
Pardon me, can you unmute your device, please, someone? Okay, let me mute all of you then. Okay, so as you see here, there are many modules already, but these are not inclusive, exhaustive list of modules. There are lots of modules on Exchange. And yesterday when Anwar was talking in Exchange, he said Exchange is a place where we share our different modules, connectors. They are called assets, APIs, templates, and so on. We'll see them one by one what they are. But now let's see how to add a module from Exchange. If you cannot get it from here, if you want to search it here, if you cannot get it, like for example, there is an Amazon product called Redshift. Actually, I have imported it, but it doesn't show by default. When you search it here, it doesn't show here. Maybe let me search MongoDB. So there is, if I search MongoDB, I don't see it here. So what I do is I click this search in Exchange. This is an icon for Exchange, this one. Search for Exchange. Also, it is here on the top left, open Exchange. So when I click it, first it will ask me to provide my credentials. That is why creating a free Anypoint platform account is important, because to bring in connectors or to push your app to the cloud, you have to have an account and you have to connect them by just providing your username and password. In my case, I have done that. When you click this, it will ask you to input your username and the password. Now they are connected, so I can search here, search Exchange, for example. If I search Mongo, you see there is a connector, MongoDB connector. Now I can add it to here and finish, so then MongoDB will come here and I can use it in my applications. So that is one important thing that I want to show. So under MongoDB module, you see how many different operations we can do with it. So for modules that we don't get them, search modules here in the search palette. If you don't get them, connect with your Anypoint platform and search in Exchange. That is one example that I want to show. Okay, another one that I was referring to a couple of times is reading data. The reading data, yes, we read data from our computer, but we can also be reading data from the cloud. Like for example, in here, I want to show you this one. I have, so let me close this. By the way, you can, when you create different projects, the projects that you don't want, they should not be running, just close them. Right click on that and close project. So now there isn't any project. Why? That is why the canvas is gray. It has grayed out. Now I want to open this project that was closed. I just double click on it. Now it is opening and I will see the configuration file for it. So this is the same, it reads the data from Amazon. So I have an Amazon account and there is a data store called S3. It stands for Simple Storage System, I think 3SS. So I uploaded the CSV data to there, the airport CSV, and I want to get it in JSON format and to write it to disk. That is what this one is doing. Basically, it reads it from there and it writes it to disk. So let me show you a couple of things here. If I clear this console, one thing, this S3 connector, you don't get it here. You have to import it from Exchange. One thing. The other thing is with Amazon allows to have free account for up to 2 weeks, 2 months, I think. So we will create free accounts to practice with. We have to be careful not to incur, not to go beyond the free tier, but we can learn with the free tier and get acquainted, get cloud experience. So let me show you. Let me log into AWS first so that you can see what it looks like. I have to log in. Okay, personal field. Oh, this one is difficult to see what it is. Okay, 58F7H. Submit. Oh, incorrect. Okay, let me use audio.
Please type the numbers you hear. 0, 0, 9, 3, 9, 4,
4.
Okay. Then I have my password. Then I have 2 layers of two-factor authentication. Come on. It is 655293. I just want to show you S3 and run the app and Okay, authentication code now. Code here is 824596. Let's see if it works. Okay, so Amazon AWS has different services. They are very commonly used. I think it is the number one cloud service out there. So among the different services, one of them is Amazon S3 for storing data. You can store any kind of data here. It could be video, structured or unstructured. I mean, tabular data or images, anything. So here I have uploaded the airport.csv. So it is this one. So my application, I want it to read from this location. And give it to me. So that is what this Mule app is doing. Okay, we have a listener, the same like before. It is called write to disk. Okay, so from AWS, I want it to write it to my computer. And this one, it connects to S3. I'm giving it the bucket name. Bucket name is like a folder name, and the key is a file. So if I show you here, my file is here. This is my bucket name. Fish MuleSoft is my bucket name. My key is a file. I specified them here, and there is connector configuration because I have to be able to authenticate it to use to read data from that S3 location. So I give like my credentials, like these are like they are called access key and secret key. Consider them as password, username and password with added layer of security. Okay, so in here it is reading the data, and also under MIME type, I have specified that it is CSV. That is important. When you read CSV, if you don't specify it is MIME type is CSV, the whole line it is going to read it as a single string. And here the same thing, I'm transforming it to JSON. This is so far the same as what we did before. And here I brought from file, I brought just write. So the write, I have to specify the location with the file name. And let me show you my location. It is under training. I'm giving it a name, airports from s3.json. I want to show you, I don't have that file here, but it is going to save, it is going to, after we invoke that application, it is going to bring the data from the cloud and save it here. It was in CSV format in the cloud, but here it is going to save it in JSON format, and its name will be called airports from S3. There are other things here. The write mode, overwrite means to replace it completely or append it when there is data that is coming frequently. Do you want to put them together, keep the previous ones also, or just keep the fresh only? That is where you use either append, overwrite, and so on. We'll see more practical examples with that. Okay, so this one saves the data to my S3 location. I have brought this set payload as a processor from core. So there is, you see here, set payload and set variable. We are going to play with them. So the set payload, it creates a payload basically. So what this is a flow, so it is sequential. If there was if I use the set payload, it is going to overwrite previous payloads. If there was a payload before that, now the payload will be what I specify here. And my payload, I want to be, I'm putting string here, data written to disk. So when I invoke this application, it is just going to return in my postman this message. You can give it any descriptive thing that you want, but here I want it to tell me that data has been written. I want it to be descriptive. And the logger, as we said, logger is what gets displayed in the console. So in the logger, I have written completed successfully. So if it doesn't reach in the logger, if it failed before reaching the logger, then this will not be printed in the console. And if it doesn't reach in this payload, then it is not going to return this message data written to disk when I invoke it. So now let me run it, then I will take questions that you have after that. Run this project, and until I think this runs, I can take a couple of questions. Anyone who has questions, you can unmute yourselves and ask questions. All these steps I have specified them in the slide also. The other thing, see this one, someone asked about Java. So you see it shows here, it says launching a JVM. So this is a Java virtual machine. Yeah, so it uses JVM, but however, we don't, it has abstracted all these steps, and we just, when we drag and drop, it generates the necessary code for us. So we don't worry about that. So I hope from today's class you got some perspective, some understanding of what we are going to be building about Mule applications, and also try to connect them with our day-to-day applications that we interact with. Most of the applications that we have in our phones, in the browser, are something like this. We request something, we send a request, the request is sent through the API to a server or a data store somewhere. Then the server processes the data, and the data comes back in the appropriate format to us, and then the app displays it. Okay, so now it has been deployed, I mean. So the status here, focus this status, it says deployed. Okay, so here we are getting data from S3, from Amazon. The data is in CSV format, and we want it to write it to our computer. And think this one, for example, automating it. Like if there is data coming every day, if Amazon dumps some data for us there, and we want to, every data we want to bring it to our machine or somewhere, or back it up somewhere, we don't want to do that manually. We just can have a scheduler that runs every morning, reads the data, and puts it somewhere. It is something similar. So here I need the, as I said, I need the path name, which is write to disk. The other thing that I want you to pay attention is in here, I don't have that file, so it should write it to here. And where is it getting the data from? It is getting it from Amazon. As you can see, there is aws.amazon.com here. And I specified my folder or my bucket and the key, which is the file. And it is in CSV originally. It is going to bring it from there and change it to JSON and save it to disk, or it could be inserted to a database. So now let me go to Postman, and okay, just replace this. I don't want to replace the rest of it. Localhost 8081 is the same, just my path is write to disk now. Notice I don't have that file here. I will send this request now, and it is get method. Pay attention to the method, because in like for example in the certification, you most probably will get one question about the method. So if you want to get the data, do you use get, do you use post, do you use put, and so on. So send it. So let me ask one question here to make sure you are following me. When I send a request here, when I click send, what will be printed here? What will be printed here in the body? Let me show my flow. Who can unmute themselves and talk? When I send that request, that means this listener is listening. When I send that request, this flow will be triggered. So here the data will be read from S3. Here it will be converted to JSON. Here it will be written to CSV. Here we are setting our payload. Here we are giving a logger value. So when I send a request, what will be printed in my Postman? Who can answer? Can you unmute yourselves? Can someone talk? Or you are not? Okay. That means I have muted all of you maybe. So allow participants to unmute themselves. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Can you talk now?
Yes.
Yes. Thank
I'm so
you.
sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. So who can answer now?
Jason.
The JSON data?
CSV. No, CSV.
The message right on the set payload.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes. Understand this. I mean, we'll spend enough time on that. We'll understand the structure of a Mule flow. But see the logic here. So this one, it triggers the listener. It triggers the flow. This one, it reads the data. Now the data is a payload. What payload is the data. Here, that payload, we are transforming it to JSON. We are calling it the payload, transform it to JSON. Here, that payload, if you see, the content is the payload here. See, content payload, and we are writing it to here. If we don't have this set payload, then what it is going to return is some status that it wrote it to disk. But now we are creating explicit payload here, our own payload, and it is a string that says data written to disk. So now when I send a request, it should give me this. It should show this text. Let's test it. So it should that data written to disk should be printed here. This JSON will go away, and here also the file name .json airports CSV from S3.json should be also written here if it works appropriately. So send request. See now data written to disk. When I see this now, I feel comfortable. I'm sure that my data has been written to disk, because if all these processors the previous processes don't succeed, my flow cannot reach here and cannot return this one. Okay, let's go to that folder and see if that file is there. Now you see airports from S3 and see if it is JSON. If I click it, you see it is JSON. It was CSV before in S3. Now we changed it to JSON and brought it here. Perfect. So let's have Kahoot time first before we go to the study groups and other issues discussion. So yeah, now we have started. You can gauge for yourselves if you are really understanding MuleSoft, if it is really for you or not. I would say it is something that we use in our everyday lives, and you can relate it with the applications that you use, that you interact with. So it should be fun for everyone, but you can decide, you can gauge for yourselves. Okay, Kahoot time. Go to home. The other thing that I am thinking of is once we complete, like, let's say, significant portion of the course, let's say some 20-30% of it, we will also have a questions bank, shared questions bank on Google Drive, so people can add questions, any kind of questions, either questions that you got online from reading books or from any other resources, or the questions that you also create your own, so that others can also read and catch up. So we have week 2 class 2 here. Week 2 class 2 session 2, right? Yeah, quiz 2. Starting it. Why is it saying like that now? Game pin shown. So go over the slides in your free time. Go over the slides. Try to build the application, and also you can watch the application building process. I have recorded. I will share it. So practice that. Try to internalize it. Internalizing it in the beginning. Once it is like what is it called? Aha moment. Once you understand the basics, the entry point, then after that it is like sliding downhill. It is easy. Okay. Out of 80 people, 30 of them are still bystanders. For a Mule application to compile, it has to have at least what? We said a flow must have, an application has 3 parts, source, process, and error handler. Which one is a must? Which one is a must to have? Yep, the processor is a must. Error handler and source are optional. We will see the error handler, it has a default by itself. If you don't specify it, it uses the default setting. Source also, there are internal flows that should not be triggered from externally that can be called within flows, so they don't have sources. Thank you, Hailish and Lina. What HTTP method in a RESTful web service is typically used to completely replace an existing source? Completely replace. Put versus patch versus post is what you compare here. Perfect, yes, it is put. Post is for creating new, patch is for updating partially, and put is for completely replacing it, and if it doesn't exist, it creates it. Yared and Fethawi and a couple of them. Good. From which of the following is an event source? There are different event sources. We will see down the line. Today we saw 2 or 3 of them. So which one is an event source? That means that starts the flow. Scheduler, set payload, transform message, set variable. Yeah, I think the word itself is descriptive here. Scheduler schedules the flow, and based on the schedule, then it is going to trigger the flow or start the flow. Thank you. True, false. An event source enriches, transforms, filters, and aggregates the data. Is it an event source or a process that does this? Yeah, the event source just starts the flow. Its task is just starting the flow. The processor does data transformation, enriching, filtering, and aggregation. So the answer is false here. It is a processor that does this. Podium time. Binyam. Followed by Yared. Thank you, Yared. Yesterday also you were performing good. And there is another number. Yeah, I can give your name descriptive, something descriptive, but that's good. Thank you very much, guys. It was really fun. I guess we have covered all of the slides that I wanted to cover for today. Perfect. Yeah, I can go over the slides and then over the videos that I am going to upload. Then you should understand this quite well. The only thing that you will not be able to reproduce is this one. In the future, we will create free AWS and Google accounts and play. This one I showed you to so that you have a bigger understanding of what we are doing, so that you can have an image of the big picture. Perfect. So I can stop sharing. Oh yeah, I